Welcome back to USA Simulator. So, yeah.
Yeah, USA Simulator, if you're drunk.
Alright. To be fair, this is actually one of the few good things about this game. The recaps, the story so far bits from when you started an episode. Listen to this.
There were two wolf brothers living in their home there with their papa wolf.
That does look cute.
They all lived happily together, but one day, hunters took their dad away. Forever. So now the brothers were alone.
Hunters, he says.
I wonder, do you think this game would have been better if it was legit about two wolf brothers?
Honestly, if they went for one of those animated animal type things, it probably would have been a lot better, yeah.
For the first time, they slept in the backwoods.
I'll give them credit. This is the kind of symbolism that I'm fine with. Like, you know, it doesn't feel too preachy. Which, you know, given the game we're playing here, says something.
It was a peaceful orchard, but they didn't know.
But the wolf brothers managed to escape.
I love how the racist bigots are always known as the hunters. Also, the help of a friendly bear. So yeah, there you go. Brody is a bear in this metaphor.
Oh, so they're taking cues from the Alpha and Omega series, I see.
You know, I'm half tempted to sing that one of the Brother Bear songs.
That's how they found
Super Wolf.
Da,
headed
da,
to
da.
the land of their pop, where they hope to find peace.
The art style looks nice on these flashbacks. You know, yeah, kudos. That being said, keep in mind.
Hold on.
that
Life is Strange 2 is a story-based game that allows player choice. The action doesn't will have consequences will impact the world around your brother. Choose wisely. The awesome adventures of Captain Spirit's save file import has succeeded. So there you go. For this episode, we will import my Captain Spirit save file from the playthrough we did, and we will affect how we meet Chris. So we're going to see Chris.
How different can the meetings be in that regard?
Basically, for example, if we made his entire outfit, he will be wearing that outfit, for example, just to give you an example.
Okay. So let me guess, it mainly just changes what outfit he's wearing, essentially.
Mostly, yes. You're going to be able to change Chris's ending of the story depending on your choices, and we'll talk about it when we get to that. For now, Sean, Daniel, is it a good idea to let your pupper, you know, run around in the snow on its own? I'm pretty sure that would be dangerous for the dog. Like,
I guess, you know, the idea is to let the dog trek out on her own and trek ahead for them.
I guess,
maybe...
but can dogs even do that in the snow? Like,
yeah, like, you know, you literally get tracker hounds for this stuff. Granted, I don't know if she's trained for that. But
yeah, I'm pretty confident Mushroom is not trained for that, yeah.
Given she's relatively a loyal dog, I assume that she'll come back to them.
surrounds us and binds us together.
I know I've already talked about this in the previous part, but I might as well bring it up here again. Basically, they're just training. That's basically it.
So I'm guessing it's been like a month at least.
I think it's like I think it said there, but I missed it. Like it's like 2-3 months around there. I think.
So I guess all this time they've just been training.
Yeah, basically they found. You're gonna learn this later, but they found an abandoned house that they've been living in. Basically.
So I guess the general story is just these two's lives got screwed up and they're doing whatever.
Yeah, it's been up around Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I wish I was watching that instead of playing this. But
but yeah, I'm curious. What exactly is the overall goal of the story at this
to get to Puerto Lobos, as the metaphor said, they like to go back to the home of their Papa Wolf, as in Puerto Lobos, which is the place where their dad comes from, because apparently they have family there. And since, you know, Mexico, they run away from to Mexico, where the American cops can get them, basically.
I'm gonna guess the main reason that they pretty much have stuck to this one area for a while is to train his powers before moving on, and because it's winter then?
I don't know, they never really specify that. The main thing is that they're living here because it's a nice place away from everything. What I was trying to say. Yeah, okay. One of the other things is that, like I know I've said this before, but I want to expand upon it now that we have some downtime. I really think they really missed the mark by making it so that we don't actually control the superpowered person. Isn't that the whole appeal of this franchise to begin with? I mean,
that's one thing True Colors fixed it.
Yeah, I know, but it begs the question, like, what kind of backwards decision is this?
I guess the idea is that, you're playing the older brother, so you influence how Daniel uses his powers, I guess is the thought pattern.
Yeah.
That being said, even if that is the thought pattern, no, that's never going to be more interesting than actually getting to control the powers ourselves. I can get what they're trying to do there, but if they were hoping that people would find that more interesting than playing as the little superpowered kid in the literal Life is Strange franchise, and I know some people may say, but you didn't control the supernatural abilities in Before the Storm. Well, remember, Before the Storm technically didn't have any.
Yeah, but they still
Instead, your superpower was trash-talking people.
Yeah, the choice of superpower in Before the Storm was dumb, but at the very least, we were the ones who had the special ability, at least. In here, this decision makes little sense to me. Anyway, what the actual fuck? What's happening to Daniel? On the road again. Gotta find ourselves a hideout. Then Puerto Lobos. It translates out to...
What's happening during this part in the journal?
Yeah, that's the thing. Oh, that's a good transition, Joe, but let me read this thing first. Need money and supplies before we head to Puerto Lobos. It translates out to Port of Wolves, basically. We'll hide somewhere. Yeah. Again, this game loves the wolf motif. To find out what the fuck was up with Daniel. No fucking idea how we'll handle this. Tired. Try to sleep now. Warm here. We're getting off next station. Wherever it is. So basically, whatever happened in between episodes, we get to read this bit. But I'll talk about it in a moment. Charity thrift store in same town of Albany, whatever. Found layers for Daniel and me. Harry was cool. Slept in someone's backyard shed. Blah blah blah. Yeah, here you go. Thank you. Found layers for Daniel and me. Harry was cool. So, yeah, sometimes Sean's handwriting can be a bit difficult to read. It itches. The sock walk. The sock walk. I think you mean the sock walks. I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. The sock walk.
I've never heard this saying, the sock walk. Again, maybe we might have a better idea of what this means if we actually saw what happened during these scenes. And
I know, right, Joe? I'll talk about it in a moment, but go ahead.
I get it, game. You want to skip ahead to some bits here, but again, and I get it. There is technically an end goal, but can you blame someone for forgetting there's an end goal with how sporadic things skip around?
Exactly. You know what? Fuck it. I'll just talk about it right now. Yeah, this is going to become even more apparent as we get into the later episodes. But here's what is arguably the main problem of this story: the lack of focus. Because the game every single time an episode starts, there's a time jump, and we start in a completely different setting. All the characters we met in the previous episode completely disappear from the plot and are never brought up ever again. As a result, the plot feels disjointed. Each episode feels so segmented and separate from everything else in the game, and as a result, the plot lacks cohesion. We'll meet a character in an episode, then that episode ends, and that character never shows. Again, one of the things about the small town setting of the first game is that, it was a setting that we're always meeting the same characters, and as a result, we could actually, get attached to them. But it's kind of hard to get attached to any of the characters we meet on our journey if we only get to spend a short amount of time with them before the game just puts them in the back burner and forgets about them.
And that's not to say that this sort of story can't be done well. The idea of the hero who goes from location to location, we meet characters who then come and go from the plot. That sort of plot can be done well. That being said, the problem is, and again, I know, we've only seen, 2 main sections of the game so far. Only 1 full-on chapter. But man, if the rest of the game is like that, the game does not give us time to absorb or really even catch on to a lot of these characters. Doris, I think that's the name of the woman from
Doris.
the store or whatnot. Like, I don't know if we were supposed to consider her a good or bad guy, since Daniel seemed to imply that she was bad by saying, we can't leave the dog with these bad people, even though we never saw her being bad.
Yeah.
The bigot guy was... Well, he was a factor for, like, I think all of 10 to 20 minutes in the plot overall. And again, the nice guy...
Brody,
you know, he's nice and all, and I'll admit, he probably has had some of the best writing, and yet still, he doesn't feature that long. See,
same thing
here's
with
the
Lila.
issue.
Lila in particular is probably the best offense to that, Joba, because we literally don't get to know her, like, at all.
And yet, from what you tell me, she's actually a choosable love interest.
Yeah,
Agreed.
but and by choosable love interest, I mean you occasionally phone her and have a 2-minute talk at best in each chapter.
Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
Go on, Shuri.
If I may try to fill in the blank about the cashier, because, you know, the game certainly won't, from what you're saying. Maybe because the guy who kidnapped them was her husband, right?
Yep.
Well, we don't know if he was...
Well, yeah, true. We don't know for sure, Shiro, but it's implied.
There's a lot of implying in this game, it seems, so far, and not a lot of actually explaining. So, say he is her husband, or at least like a partner of some kind.
Sure.
Could she have maybe called him upon recognizing them?
I mean,
because if they know each other that well, she would have had to have noticed that he'd kidnapped them, right? Like, this all happened outside the shop where presumably there'd be cameras and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, I'm trying, okay?
Yes, and you know what? I have to salute you for that, Troy. The problem is, there's just as many gaps still that would need to be filled. Like, okay, let's assume...
Oh, give me just one moment, Jova. Hold up just one, because I need to establish this. Daniel is sick, tired and coughing, and Sean is pondering if he has to go back to the town to get some medicine. This will be important for later. Go on, Jova.
Wait, but that's a plot detail shown in the book.
Oh, no. To be fair, the cutscenes after this will convey that as well.
Oh,
go on.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Let's assume maybe the guy is a partner of Doris. The thing is, if she is just as much a bigot as him, she does a much better job hiding it. And you know what? If the story was going for that, then, you know, kudos. You have shown how someone can be a very subtle bigot. The problem is that there was, like, absolutely no hint whatsoever. Like, even with someone who's a subtle bigot, you can get the hint that, you know, maybe they're being patronizing or, you know, maybe being a little overtly assuming or protective of someone of a minority race. She wasn't any of those things. But, so, okay, maybe he was her partner, and, you know, maybe she just doesn't know. Well, in that case, then, that wouldn't make her a bad person in that regard. And yes, I know, it's technically Daniel who suggests this, but keep in mind, Sean goes with this, which implies that he agrees with Daniel on the matter.
Can you fly them all together with
See, the thing is, like Shiroi herself implied, it's a big thing where, like, again, the game is asking too much, like, to the point where you just feel like you're basically filling in 4 holes for the writer, and it's just, and again, like, you are the writer, you're the one who's supposed to tell me how X leads to Y, okay?
It feels like one of those. It feels like one of those bits of media that relies on a lot of.
I can't put that, Jova. Much like David Cage's games, Joe, but this is one of those games where the themes but how does it make you feel? Like any logic and coherence don't matter here. It's just about how much it makes you feel. And
I feel like you can't properly. I mean, you can judge the story based on its structure and all that, but I feel like it's really hard to talk about how this story makes you feel because there's no context for anything. You're filling in the blanks yourself, and how you feel will be purely based on your very, like, vague interpretation of it. Like,
if I can offer a...
Go on.
Is this even one of those stories where it's like 90% of the media, where the writer doesn't explain every single nook and cranny because he knows that the audience will at least have some degree of media literacy to figure it out for themselves.
It does not feel like that because we legit have had to ask blatant questions on stuff that should be common sense because we legit do not know. Now, in a good story, not every little detail needs to be fulfilled because it's at least clear enough or at least inferred enough to the point where we can easily connect the dots because it's not left up too much to the imagination. Like, for example, per se, you know, like, one might question, in the original Star Wars trilogy, why doesn't Vader automatically sense Luke or whatnot? We later get information that may not clear the entire thing, but we can easily connect the dots as to why he was cut off from the Force on Luke like that. Conversely, in this game, like I've mentioned, the bigot character is inconsistent with his logic, and not in a way that shows that, oh, he's bigoted, but in a sense that really doesn't make sense. Like I mentioned, he thinks that both of these kids are bad, but then in another bit says, well, at least your little brother won't turn out to be a criminal like you. So it's like, which is it? Are you racist against all of them, or just Sean? It's inconsistent logic at that, and we have no idea for his reasoning. Now, again,
Hey, Jova. There's a line that you said to David that kind of applies here as well. If you're going to be an a-hole, at least be a consistent a-hole.
Oh god, another thing they have in common. But anyway, Shuri, I think you pretty much have reignited what I was thinking here. Like, you know those sort of games that rely very much on the audience making guesses? You know, the kind of lore-based games that really rely, well, not just games, but lore-based media in general. The kind that goes for fans to really keep it fueled with speculation and theories or whatnot. Like, this feels like a prototype for that. I say prototype because I don't think that was the intention of the writers. Like, I think the writers legit thought their message was coming in clear and true, but this is what it feels like. It feels like a piece of media that would legit rely on people making lore and theories for the actual creators.
Yeah, that's the thing, because you can have lore-heavy games, like you only have to look at RPGs for very obvious examples, but lore shouldn't be the shouldn't be the end of the whole story, because like you're supposed to have a set story that's obvious to everyone. The lore should be extra stuff for those who are interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be, you need to guess all of this and look at all these theories and such to actually understand this story. No, it should be the extra stuff for the people like me who spend a ridiculous amount of time on fan wikias to look at, because I'm interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can give you a recent example. In Final Fantasy 16, there's a particularly evil villain character who we only learned the primary motivation spoken by her in a later chapter when we confront that character again. However, if you do go out of your way to check her bio in the lore compendium, you do get a hint of it before we get to that. But
does the Wizard's Compendium also act as that in Ni no Kuni?
Well, the Wizard's Compendium doesn't have character bios. Like, so I'm not entirely certain if my example would apply.
I thought it hinted at different parts of the world.
Well, no, Wizard's Compendium has lore world building, but doesn't have character bios. Like, but sure, it works in the same way because some of the stories that are told, like the fairy tale stories that we have there in the Wizard's Companion, they add extra lore to the places that we visit, so it works on that level as well. But
that's the kind of thing I mean.
Sure, I was talking about specifically the. I was just mentioning, but go ahead, Jova. Sorry.
Basic as it may be, I'm gonna bring up one of the most obvious examples of a game that, while it spawned a ton of lore discussion, had enough of a plot itself so that it maintained a consistent plot narrative. Undertale. You probably have heard about how much speculation, how much theory, to the point where alternate universes based off of it have been developed based off of the lore that players have garnered from it. Undertale is a lore-spouting machine that is still running well to this day.
Because none of that lore is required for the main story.
Exactly. It's incredibly simple, but all you need to know for the story, for the most part, is there. There are maybe some questions you may have, but those are questions that are at least fun to ask because, those are ones that it's okay to leave up to the player's imagination.
And then there's...
Here, it's not fun to leave it up to our imagination. It feels more like we're doing work that the writers themselves couldn't be arsed to do.
Exactly.
Let me explain something to you, Dwebs. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about this game specifically. See, we ran away, and now we're mysteriously in here. Now, to be fair, the game does have the diary to give us some basic rundowns of what's going on here. But there will be time jumps in this game later on. I can tell you that will not be particularly well explained. But we'll talk about that as they go. Okay, let's go on.
Will it ever get to a point where the characters have a massive shift in personality in between chapters?
Yes, but I cannot talk about that just yet.
Oh boy. Something to look forward to. Back to what you were saying.
I actually had something else to add to you and Shira's discussion about the lore thing, but Shira's burped, so I'll wait for him. No, I'll wait for her to come back before I do that. I also could recap what's going on, but I'll also wait for her that.
I noticed that the brother Sean pulled a National Treasure 2 on his brother, where he pretended like something got his hand from under the rug.
The basic gist of it is that Sean is trying to create some rules, but I'll talk about those when Shira returns.
With great power comes great responsibility.
Basically, yeah. Basically.
Power is a curse.
They aren't a gift, they're a curse. Never heard that dialogue.
To be fair, you see that in practically every superhero story ever.
The coughing animation lets me know that he is sick from plottitis.
Yeah, the game. Well, they're later going to explain that it's apparently cold, like a bad cold, apparently.
What about you?
Better get some cold killer X.
To be fair, they've been living here in the wild in fucking snow, so it makes sense that he would catch a bad cold.
He's also a lot younger, so his immune system is a bit less good.
Alright, basically, now that Shira's here, I might as well bring a little recap. Basically, we've just been training the power, and Sean has been trying to teach Daniel rules. Don't use your power unless it's absolutely necessary. Don't show it to people, because if people see it, they might think you're a freak and try to stud you and shit. And always do what I say, and blah, blah, blah.
Yes, this is USA Simulator, so if he does show his powers to people, the FBI's coming to get him.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, I think...
he'll be cut up and experimented on.
Shiroi, we're not going to do the scientist thing, but look forward to episode 4, where we're going to see what happens when a religious community finds Daniel and his powers.
Oh, I was going to say, is it a religious cult? Oh no!
Is he? What is he? Is he? Do they think he's possessed by?
No, they think he's an incarnation of Jesus, basically.
Wait. So they actually are positive in regards.
Okay. To be fair, I'm exaggerating. They think he's a prophet and he's proof of their faith in some shit. Blah blah blah. Like they might as well say he's an incarnation of Jesus.
I don't know whether to be annoyed or shocked at the fact that it's actually something positive. I legit thought it was going to be like they treat it like a witch's trial and he has to be burned or something.
To add my piece to the whole discussion of Lord Jove and Shira what you're having just now, and then there's Final Fantasy XIV, which is its own beast, where, like I've explained in our recent playthrough, yes, technically, eventually, if you stick with it, eventually all the necessary info will be explained in the cutscenes. Problem is, the game takes its sweet ass time to get to that point, and before it gets to that point, it constantly tells you the data log has been updated. So the game basically incentivizes you to read the wikia every time something happens.
If I recall correctly, doesn't the data log occasionally get ahead of the plot too and explain
Yes, it does.
stuff?
Yes, it does.
You know,
To start
you
Daniel's
know,
delivery
I can just
service.
imagine now. Also, Daniel, you need a broomstick for the delivery
Dude,
service. But anyway,
you'll be moving
I can just
cars
imagine
around in
now.
no time if you keep
You know,
improving
all
like
the
that.
things you guys have been saying about this game. I can imagine
Well,
some hypothetical
that'd be a bad
scenario
idea.
in which someone hears you
You sure are getting good
and
at
just
this.
goes completely in the
I wonder if there's
opposite
anyone else
direction and
like
overcompensates for stuff. Oh, the game takes too long
think
to
we know
explain
it by
stuff?
now.
Fine, we'll throw it out there in the opening cutscene. What's that you say? The characters are
They're
bland?
the best
Fine, we'll
looking
give
in
them
the world.
all the personality traits you could possibly have.
It's called extremism, Dwibs, and yeah, surprisingly, some people do tend to commit that.
Yeah. Well, like what a lot of people are.
It'd be
Yeah.
funny, but still.
Yeah. But
Last week.
and there you go. We have a little thing saying nope.
Does the toilet even work?
See, and yeah, might as well talk about this the problem with episode 2. It's going to become more clear.
After all that,
Very good, Dibs. Yes, it's going to become more clear in later. But honestly, episode 2 might just be the most fillerish of the 5
Is
because
it at least good filler?
not particularly, in my opinion. I mean,
Does it at least have some fun moments?
it does, I guess. Well, I'll let you be the judge of that.
Pedro does have a point that there are immensely missed opportunities with us not getting to play with Daniel's psychic powers more. so
Yeah,
directly.
well, that might make the game a lot more fun, in my opinion. But hey, what do I know?
I guess that wouldn't be realistic enough in this ever so exaggerated version of America with children that have literal superpowers. That would not
Like-
be realistic enough.
Like I've been watching One Piece and I'm getting used to the concept of filler in that particular art form anyway. So it'll be interesting to see how this game handles it.
let me put it this way, Dwebs.
Because
ready for today's training, puppy?
because I live in a country
Sit.
where in our dramas, because they're so
Sit.
short, in
Seriously,
terms
girl.
of series run
Sit.
anyway,
Mushroom.
filler
Sit,
is
girl.
9 times out of 10 absolutely not an
kidding me?
option.
You just
Let me put
don't
it this
know
way.
how to
Really?
Let me put it this way, Dwebs.
I remember. Traitor.
Like usually in anime, filler episodes are used to establish a status quo and to let the characters just be themselves, and we can watch the characters interact. Basically, okay, in a way that you've seen those movies, so I can use this term on you to do the Takahata thing, right? Where you just watch the characters live their lives, and you get to know them via the way they live their lives, right? And the thing, and yes, Life is Strange is a franchise that clearly tries to do that. That's probably why Japan likes it.
Still too
My
many.
problem is that, like we've talked about in Before the Storm, Life is Strange 1, and now this,
Daniel.
Don't Nod is not particularly good.
I do it too.
Daniel,
Okay.
Is he just trying to get some exercise?
Welcome, a possessed boy. No time to talk.
Also, just to quickly explain to Jova, you know how your yearly series lasts about 20 odd episodes?
Yeah.
Maybe I can draw.
Our yearly ones are lucky to last 10 a year.
That explains why you sometimes cut out episodes in your versions of seasons or
Like
merge them.
some of our dramas
Dinner's
are
ready.
like at minimum 3 episodes.
I get.
3 episodes, 6, depends on what the drama is.
Yeah.
In other news, I managed to unglitch Daniel. The point is, it's none of those things. Okay, yeah, Don't Nod tries to do the Takahata thing, like I've said to Dwebs just now. The problem is that their character writing, if you're going to do that, your character writing has to be on point. And Don't Nod, as I've demonstrated before, their character writing, at least from this team, I mean, tell me why they can do this, but I don't know what's up with this team.
Now, far be it from me to say Life is Strange, the first game was magically good, but I will say this. I did not feel nearly this bored with Life is Strange 1. At least not this consistently. Like, it feels like there's no in-between. Well, okay.
Hide my power.
With some exceptions, it feels like there's very little in between for this game between either being boring or just really bad.
Yeah. This is where it begins. Like, this is gonna be another problem, by the way, with the game. As
the more Daniel loses his powers, the weaker he gets.
No. The more the game goes on, the brattier and more annoying Daniel's behavior gets, and it gets to a point where it's just going to become real. And let's just say it's going to reach points that are just. But
Pedro, I thought our choices were supposed to help shape Daniel to be a better person.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in due time.
Oh boy.
Nothing here.
Okay, let me just finish my point though. Like, if you're going to do the Takahata thing, your character writing needs to be on point. Because if the story's put on pause and we're only going to use character development as entertainment, your character writing has to be on fucking point. And like I said, Raul, Michelle, and the other guy, I think it's Christian something, like the script writer, I forgot his name. He also did the script writing for the first game. Their character writing is just I'm sorry, just not particularly good. Like, the characters don't have particularly strong personalities. The dialogue is not particularly witty or interesting.
Can you call
Go on.
It is increasingly apparent that they like to rely heavily on trauma to get us to care for the characters, to the point where when trauma is not occurring, it feels like they're just spinning their wheels around, essentially. Like, God forbid they actually kill the dog just to get us to care.
Remember...
No.
Who
I'll
do
give,
I need to have a word with?
To give you
That is the lowest common denominator, Dave.
Hold on, that's... Go on.
Since nothing's going on at the minute, to give you a couple of examples, Jova, Faulty Towers, which is one of our most well-regarded sitcoms, it only had 12 episodes.
Don't you think your power can be put to a better use?
Whereas Red Dwarf, it had is one of our most well-known sci-fi sitcoms. It's had over 70 episodes, but they all had over 32 years.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And at best, the seasons had at most 8 episodes, and most of the time just 6.
It's time for us to hit the road.
It's like, not to expand upon Jova's point. Yeah, see, one of the big reasons why Life is Strange 1, for as bad as it was more, at least more entertaining than this, is because, for one, we actually stick with one setting and the same cast of characters. As a result, it's much easier to get to know these characters. Again, problems with the characters notwithstanding, of course. Not to mention, the fact that we're in the same setting allows the world building to be more consistent, and it creates this sense of coziness to the whole thing, the whole American small town type of setting, right?
Also, for as much as I hated more so Chloe, but as much as I hated Chloe and Max felt like they had more of a personality than these two kids. I'm sorry.
I mean, Life is Strange 1 also had filler, like I've ranted about in our playthrough. The entire diversion into that alternate timeline, only for us to revert back to the original, basically meant that that entire detour was nothing but just a waste of our time.
At the very least, it was something interesting to see a different timeline, and at least we could laugh at the fact that Chloe legit has a string of dying constantly in that game, from her ineptitude to her selfishness to, well, pretty much everything that was kind of her fault in some way, except for the very last time. No, that was just the mad psychopath who, turned out to be the true bad guy all along.
Also, to clarify my comment from earlier, like, killing the dog is one thing, like, that's not really the issue, because I put up with Hino killing cats all the time. The issue is that because the story lacks so much, it feels like, and I'm probably right, that they're just doing it to make us feel.
Yeah.
Like, keep in mind, yeah, sure, Mushroom looks cute and all, but what has she done much for the plot except for look cute?
Nothing.
I guess she's their light in this darkness, for lack of a better.
Yeah, that's the thing, Shirai.
Of course, when she dies, it's gonna be like the deepest, darkest despair, I guess.
That's the thing, Jova. The game. I mean, yeah, they do give Mushroom her funeral,
Yes.
and the funeral lasts like 2-3 minutes, and after that, the game just moves on and basically forgets about it. So.
Wow.
So even the game itself doesn't seem to care much about it. If I'm going to be honest with you.
Why is this
have a
game
crew
so
now.
creatively
Here comes the
bankrupt?
loot.
It's more so the fact that these, like I've said before, Raul and Michelle just suck at this. I'm sorry, they just suck at this. It's that simple.
The thing is, like, you know, I'm not too surprised it sucks, but it sucks in a lot of ways different from the first Life is Strange, which is interesting. Like, well, that's not to say that this
turn,
doesn't
lover.
share problems with the first Life is Strange, but a lot of the problems are unique to this game, surprisingly.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you found ways to screw up in variety. I don't know whether to applaud or weep for you.
This feels like, you know what this feels? This to me feels like after Life is Strange 1, the developer Raul and Michelle wanted to make something completely different than Life is Strange, but they knew they needed to keep it in the Life is Strange franchise because otherwise Square wouldn't fund the game. So
brand was apparently selling off of name alone at the time, I think.
yeah, because this doesn't feel like a story that was made for Life is Strange. It's because this is going to become a thing that more apparent later on. But I'm going to tell you this right now, and I agree with Rybread's review on this. You could very easily write the psychic powers out of the story, and the story wouldn't really end up much different, to be honest with you. The psychic powers most of the time are only used in specific situations that can still could have easily been rewritten with you could very easily take out the psychic powers and rewrite, and with minimal rewrites the game wouldn't really end up much different. Whereas, to give Life is Strange 1 some credit, if you try to remove the time travel out of Life is Strange 1, yeah, no minimal amount of rewrites could do that. You would have to basically throw out the entire thing and start from scratch, because the time travel was inherently tied to how the story is told. Whereas in this,
Harkens back to the problem you've mentioned, that we don't get to even play as the person with
Yeah.
the superpowers in this game.
which to me is absolutely ridiculous. This game would be a lot more, again, like in one of the best things of Life is Strange 1 was the time rewinding, where you could if you didn't like the outcome of a choice, you could just rewind and see how the other outcome is, and if you preferred this outcome, we'll stick with that. If not, we'll revert back and pick our original choice again. It was an interesting, unique way of handling choices in story-driven games. But in here, okay, we have a psychic powered kid. Are you going to give us? I'm generally wondering if maybe the developers weren't really skilled enough to create a Star Wars Force Unleashed type of system for Daniel or Sean.
It's
I mean, I get that it's not an action game, but like, it's still really frustrating that we don't get to play with Daniel's psychic powers like we can in with the special powers in the other Life is Strange games.
I come in for it like this. When it feels like David Cage's Beyond Two Souls game gave you more freedom with the superpowers, you know we've got a problem. Given how railroaded that game is.
You're right.
Yeah, they're like Aiden's abilities in Beyond Two Souls are just super scripted, and you have to follow the exact pattern of actions that the game set out for you, with zero experimentation involved. Go on.
You could get somewhat different outcomes in chapters based off of how you used Aiden's powers, or if you chose to at all or not. I mean, granted, Beyond Two Souls is still crap. I'm just saying that this game officially has the benchmark of it feels even more scripted and less full of freedom than flipping Beyond Two Souls.
That's sad. That's the thing.
And now he smokes to show the stress, I guess.
See,
Did he smoke before?
well, remember, Jova, in the first episode, we actually get a choice with Lila, where Lila offers you a cigarette, and you can choose yes or no. And I picked no, but regardless of whether I picked no, he still smokes in this episode. Yes.
Weird. Maybe it's to show he's stressed out.
Yeah, probably.
that could have been a very little detail to at least, reflect your choice from earlier or not, or at the very least show us the part in the story where he gets distressed. I guess maybe we're just supposed to infer that, except, again, we have not gotten to see much of a journey. Like, that's the thing. Story-wise, it's been a while since their dad died, but for us, the viewers, it doesn't feel that long because there's not really been much story length since that point.
But that's because, again, we barely spend any time with the characters, and what little time we do spend with the characters, the writing is weak and not particularly interesting, not particularly witty. As a result, the character personalities don't really shine.
Sean trying to see if
Sean in particular is probably the biggest problem regarding the main characters, because he's so bland and devoid of any kind of interesting character trait. He's like it's like Gaming Tank said in his review of this game. Aside from "I've got family," he has there's literally nothing to his character, like, at all.
It sounds like you've seen your fair share of Life is Strange 2 reviews, though granted, from what I could understand, this game is very easy pickings for a critical mind.
It is. I've seen plenty of Life is Strange reviews. Like I said, the best defense... you might as well tell you, because, again, there's practically nothing happens in this chapter. Yeah, you see what I mean about this episode loving to spin its wheels? Get on with it!
Yes, game, we get it. They're sad. They live in an abandoned house, and... Yeah, okay, I guess they showed us what daily life is like for them, but... What purpose does this
have to first make us...
except to establish that Dan is sick?
You have to first make us care before you get to those scenes. But, okay. God, I'm forgetting his name again. The point is, there's a review. No, there's a review. There's a video about comparing both Life is Strange 1 and True Colors. Because remember, True Colors is kind of a remake of 1, kind of. And he mentions a good point about why he prefers Life is Strange 1 over True Colors. I'm not going to go for the entire review of him, but I'll give you his final conclusion at the end, which sums it up pretty well. He finds the first game, he finds the first game's characters to, look like shit. Like here's what he says: Life is Strange, so Life is Strange 1 is worse than True Colors in a lot of ways. It looks like shit. The characters make me puke, and all that shit. His argument is, he thinks Life is Strange 1 is a game with more interesting ideas, but with way worse execution, whereas True Colors has better execution, but far less interesting ideas. Yeah, that's probably the best defense of the first game I've seen, so kudos to that.
The most consistent complaint I've heard of True Colors is that it's safe.
Yeah.
Now, I can understand why they went safe, but I still have yet to see the game for myself. I'll still probably take True Colors over anything else Life is Strange-wise, though.
Same.
If I actually want to have a good time.
Same.
That being said, this part certainly happened.
Yeah, like I said, episode 2 is probably the most boring, because very little actually happens in this episode.
Like, I don't want to sound like I constantly need action to occur, but... I'm sorry, I'm just not really getting the point of any of this stuff.
Like I said, Jova, if you're going to do the Takahata thing, your character writing needs to be on point, and in this game's is not.
Yeah, Grave of the Fireflies the Saint.
Or in the Green Gables as well. The reason that story works is because the writing and the characters are on point. So you like just watching these characters just live. In this,
that's full-blown slice of life.
Yeah, this game...
Pedro, let me clarify. I like watching those characters live and grow.
Yeah.
How have Sean and Daniel actually grown over the course of the game? And I know some may be saying, oh, it's too early. No. I would argue that by Chapter 2, we should get a good sense of how they have grown.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like much is... Sorry, go on.
Okay, no, you finish.
It does not feel like, aside from the fact that their dad is dead now, and that they're miserable, it doesn't feel like much has changed. Sean is still bland, Daniel's still kind of a brat, but he's a brat with powers, and well, now he's sick, I guess. Like, sure, yeah, stuff happens to them, but I don't feel like they've grown in any way so far.
Yeah, that's the problem. Like, this game loves to spin its wheels. Anyway, everybody, that...
Go on, Shiroi.
sorry, Shiroi, sorry, go on.
That's fine. I'll be really quick with this anyway. It's kind of a basic point. You know the whole thing of some children have to grow up way too quickly than they ever should?
Yes.
That really should be what what is happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they've just lost literally everything. Like, there needs to be... Like, I know, Pedro, you often say it's like realistic writing doesn't equal good writing. I feel like it would here.
Sure.
Like,
No.
they need to, because I know, like, I know you don't say that as, like, it's an absolute rule. Like, I know that's not, where you're coming from, but it's like, it definitely applies here where it's like, nah, you need to speed the shit along because these two are gonna need to grow up way quicker than any other character would.
Yeah, it's the same problem. Yeah, no. See, that gives me a chance to clarify, Shiroi, so allow me. What I mean when I say that is realistic writing in of itself is not good writing. You can have realistic writing. You can have realistic writing, but the writing being realistic does not inherently make it good. It has to be the realism has to be accompanied with because in stories we need certain elements to make the story satisfying. Like that's why I've explained in our part 1 of this game where yes, the shit that happened to Daniel and Sean happens in real life, but when you put it in the context of a story, it comes across as like Jova said, contrived, out of nowhere. It comes the fuck out of nowhere, so it takes you out. There's a method to this. Like, it's not as simple as... Go on.
And to add on to Shiroi's point also, this is one of those times where realistic writing would actually benefit the game because Life is Strange, so far as a series, has been that one of its selling points is that it feels incredibly realistic. Sure, you got the powers, but you see how realistically a teenager would use these powers. Ironically, with how haphazard the writing is, it doesn't feel realistic. In their attempts to be so real, they feel fake.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
You see the thing. No, you see, we were on the topic of Anne of Green Gables. Like me and Shira talked about this when we watched season 1 of Anne of N.E., where the carrot, like Shira said, boys in the 18th century were forced to grow up a lot quicker than the kids of today because at the time kids were expected to go to work at a very young age. It was a part of it was stuff of the times, and Anne with an E, despite that, still has the kid boys act like modern kid boys who are played tricks on girls and are incredibly immature, even though, like we've said, boys in the 18th century were much more mature because they were forced to go to work at a way younger age than the kids of today. So it makes no sense to write boys of that time period like that. So it's a very tight rope. The point is, let's just get this done. See you, everybody.
See ya.
Papa.